Hi, everyone, and welcome to our exciting panel today about the future of technology in human resource management. We're going to talk about how AI and a data-centric approach to talent management can bring greater insights, more effective leadership, and most importantly, a more equitable playing field that includes diversity and inclusion, where candidates get looked at on capabilities and they have an opportunity to excel on their innate strengths. It's a very exciting time. And we're honored to have a great panel discussion today. We have Jeff Griggs, he's the Chief Revenue Officer with Eightfold AI. Sachit Kamat, he is the Chief Product Officer with Eightfold. Anthony Colella, he's a Global Managing Partner with Heidrick & Struggles. And Maria Howard, she's a Partner and General Manager with Heidrick & Struggles. So to begin, we've seen significant digital transformation in how businesses operate and innovate. It has also changed how we work and how we lead, expectations of how our organizations operate, and workforce challenges. And I was wondering, starting with you, Anthony, could you tell us how HR leaders and current challenges with digital-first approach to driving business performance are impacting overall results? How's that connection going?
I think digitalization and the digital transformation of our businesses and processes, they've been happening all around us for decades, right? Use of data, automation, improved and more informed decision-making. It's allowed us to be able to make better decisions and drive to better outcomes faster. Whether we look to the introduction of customer relationship management to improving the sales process, or supply chain automation and driving efficiency and productivity, these approaches have brought significant benefits to the potential that we're unlocking in our businesses, right? And I think it's long overdue that we bring these approaches and benefits as well to our most important business asset, which is our people, our leaders. The digital transformation of leadership is an opportunity for us to position our leaders for optimum business success. By using insights and AI, modern approaches to data and analytics, to ensure that you're focusing on the right person in the right role with the right support. And this will be a critical way in which we can create better business outcomes, elevate the HR organization as a critical business partner, and create efficiencies and significant time savings along the way.
A follow-on question, in this era of heightened expectations, and especially around diversity and inclusion, how are you seeing this ever-evolving work environment? It seems to be in a state of flux around retention, around talent mobility within an organization. And how's this transformation becoming more and more magnified in what you're seeing? I'd like to hear from Sachit and Jeff from Eightfold, and also Anthony and Maria, if you'd like to comment on that.
Sure. Well, I can start us off, Louis. I think it's put the need for objective data to transform how we manage leadership even more at the forefront. Flexibility and different ways of working are fantastic, but they can create an uneven playing field when it comes to access and the traditional ways of being promoted, which is often about who you know, not just what you've accomplished. So these approaches that we've used in the past can be biased, they can be subjective, and often they lack the results that we've set forth for the inclusive environments that retain great leaders. By taking a digital-first approach, we can level that playing field, ensuring that we focus on consistent and comparative data across deeper levels of leadership to drive engagement and promotion decisions.
And maybe just to add to that, right? So if you think about the traditional way in which hiring has been done at most companies, and even sort of internal mobility into various roles that are open at companies, generally the processes have been very human powered. If it's a hiring manager that knows someone that ran into someone, at the water cooler, or it's a situation where, someone may have effectively interacted during a meeting in person. Well, one thing with the last year and a half in this post-COVID environment that we're all living in is that is much, much harder to do. But even before that, it is absolutely true that we all as human beings have inherent biases in the way that we think about problems. And physically, it's just not possible for us to know the millions and millions of people that are out there effectively, potentially, that can do any role at our companies. these are the kinds of problems that the technology that we are building at Eightfold can really fix. If you think about the ability of the data and the algorithms to pour through millions and millions of candidate records and effectively hone down to the handful of people that can actually be successful at any given role and bring those to the decision makers so that they can make informed decisions, that is really the underlying technology that we have built. And so excited about bringing some of these technologies to market, specifically for some of the use cases that we're talking about here.
When you look at the business impact that leaders expect from, changing to these approaches, what are you starting to see with your customers, and what can organizations expect in 2022 going forward with these new technologies?
Yeah, maybe just the way to think about it, right, is that effectively when you put the power of data in the hands of recruiting teams and in the hands of HR leaders that are thinking about digital transformation and are thinking about transforming their companies using the power of data, what is now possible is, instead of the old way where you would work with spreadsheets and try to figure out, using all the data that was in disparate HR systems within the enterprise. One of the things that we have built is this ability to really understand and connect the data that is within the walls of an enterprise with everything that is available about people on the web. And when you start to combine that data and really understand people at a really deep level about all of the capabilities, about their potential, about the things that they're capable of doing, that's when you effectively unlock the possibilities of making informed decisions on making sure that the right people get hired into the right roles. And that is really one of the real advancements that we've seen with the talent intelligence platform, is this ability to use data and AI to power talent decisions throughout the life cycle, and really make sure that instead of the traditional approaches, which have been effectively hampered by bias and hampered by the scalability of human beings, being able to make those decisions at scale in a way where a company can succeed and effectively make the right decisions to power the business outcomes that they're looking for.
Personalization at scale that brings a level playing field to hiring is much needed. And Maria and Anthony, I'd like to hear what you have to say with regard to what our colleague from Eightfold just talked about in terms of technology knowing and engaging with the workforce, talking about talent mobility, and talk about the state of leadership in the digital evolving world from your perspective, being leaders in talent management.
Well, there's been a lot of focus on the workforce, and Sachit just talked about that really beautifully, and rightfully so. But the ways of engaging and managing leadership has remained really rooted in the past, right? So we continue to rely on this outdated approach to leadership. Think of a typical Fortune 500 organization. You've got multiple leadership initiatives across development and selection, succession planning, assessment. And you spend millions of dollars on these programs, often with different vendors and partners who have their own unique frameworks and data. And the approach that's taken across these are actually quite similar and at times lackluster. It's assess and report and debrief. And what this does is place a heavy burden on leaders. So if I'm a leader, not only am I assessed in many different ways across different initiatives, but it's also left to me to interpret and apply this piecemeal information in my day-to-day work. And the data is point in time, right? It doesn't have the context of the business. It doesn't update when there's a change in the organization. So having rigid, siloed point-in-time approaches to leadership aren't relevant to this very fluid and dynamic, changing business and global environments that we find ourselves in. The two approaches just simply don't match. And we're left with suboptimal and often manual ways of trying to align our business and leaders. And so now is the time to be transformative and take a new approach to leadership. And we're uniquely positioned to do so, since Heidrick is all about defining great leadership aligned to the business context.
Your comments remind me of the comments from BNY Mellon during the Cultivate 21 conference. And Sachit and Jeff, if you could comment on how has Eightfold succeeded in helping leaders at BNY Mellon and other customers start to ingrain diversity and inclusion and change the culture and set the bar higher for leaders to start to revolutionize cultures, to start to drive this change of culture at the very systemic level that so many of your customers talked about at Cultivate?
So, Louis, great points, and certainly I want to highlight a lot of what Maria talked about, which was just change. The fluidity in our workforce and the fluidity of what we now see as far as change. Let's face it, the average individual's skills or half-life of skills are changing every single day. So you have to look at what transformation a business is going through, just like BNY, just like any of our other clients you referenced from our Cultivate conference. They're now seeing that the skills that they have today are not the skills that they need in the future. So in the case of BNY, they have to look at how do they either reskill or upskill or look at the potential of those individuals in their organization. So when we look at our customers and we look at what their feedback is, it's really around how do we look at our current skills, which is the really underpinning of what Sachit talked about that the data provides, and takes all of the bias out of the decision-making criteria, but looks at what is the skill of the future, what are the skills we currently have, how do we enable those individuals to have more of a leadership capability, and what are those enriched and enhanced skills that we need to give them so that they can be successful in the future. And that's really the key component to why you'll see our customers being successful, and certainly all the great stories you heard at Cultivate.
Anthony and Maria, could you expand on that whole concept of looking at capabilities and the vision that Greg just shared of a data-centric view to potentials and capabilities, and what does that mean going forward in leadership, and how will that change leadership over time and change the very nature of an organization's structure, performance, identity?
And I think to build upon what Maria said earlier, first and foremost, this type of transformation and opportunity is going to create a massive savings of time, effort, and cost for organizations as a whole, and especially HR, right? To Maria's point, the current approaches to supporting an organization's leaders, well, they're highly manual, they're very antiquated, and they really lack any type of connection back to the business need itself. A typical organization is dependent on a menagerie of complex and old-fashioned things like assessments or 360s, and they're typically conducted over many disconnected, slow-moving, and expensive consulting engagements. The HR organization is then left to try to assemble the artifacts that are created as part of these exercises, and typically stacks of PDFs around leaders or Excel spreadsheets, and they have to try to assemble these in real time and use them to be able to advise their board or their business leaders. It's just not effective, and it's painful, and it's slow, and typically it's out of date before they even get to use them. So that goes away, and it shifts to an approach that is automated, relevant, and always on, right? A living, breathing solution that's creating visibility into the organization's leadership, so that they can adjust and support at the speed that their business really needs. I think second, to further that, there's significant business benefits that this is going to create. An organization can shift from a look backward to looking ahead. So imagine being able to sit down as an HR organization and an advisor with business leaders and model out how their next strategic business imperative or business priority would be supported or not by their current leaders. Imagine being able to mobilize your talent, your leaders, regardless of personal relationships and who knows them or who they know within the organization, no matter where they sit, structurally or within geographies, and make sure that you've got the best leader with the most optimal chance of success in the right role at the right time for the right business initiative. Then imagine knowing holistically where that leader is likely going to struggle, right? I mean, we all have gaps. We all have areas where we need support. So being able to have those types of insights driven through the business problem you're trying to solve, and making sure that you're mitigating those risks with any leader so that you can maximize the business outcome that they're going to create for you. It's a game changer. And really nobody can do this at scale in real time today.
And further on, with regard to looking at the future of work and how it's evolving so rapidly, and from your perspectives at Heidrick and Douglas and the unique perspective that you have in the strategic view and such invaluable data that you have access to, how are you seeing leaders start to address this today, and how are they becoming to get an epiphany about how valuable this data is to change not only their own behavior, but also to change the behavior of the organizations and start to grow into this future of looking at capabilities as opposed to just who you know or any of the other older approaches to dealing with the issue of talent mobility and bringing talent on?
Yeah, so Lewis, what really brought this home, and especially urgency of why we need to focus on this now, is a study that Heidrick conducted recently. We looked at one of the major industries that we serve across our search and consulting practices. And what we found is half of our executive placements were new roles that didn't exist before. So let's say that again, because I think it's really important. Half of the placements into the organization were new roles that never existed. And I think we're all seeing this in the market, right? We've now heard of things like the Chief Experience Officer or the Remote Work Czar. There's lots of titles that have green in front of them now, or heads of digital. I think the technology titles alone, we probably could list 50 that didn't exist 5 years ago. So it shows us that the future of work is here. So when you think about how you're going to develop and promote leaders into these roles, you can't simply rely on the past or hierarchical structures or traditional ways of getting things done, because you have to reimagine what capabilities and experiences will translate into success. Right now, a lot of organizations are forced to guess at the right combination of leadership attributes that will drive their business outcomes, and that doesn't serve their organization and certainly doesn't serve their leaders. So to limit that guesswork and be well informed in this new and different, we have to source and mine insights from the collective intelligence that exists across boundaries, across data sources, across leadership initiatives, even, as Sachit mentioned earlier, data that exists outside of our companies, that's out in the public domain. We have to have an intelligence system that drives this future-focused definition of leadership, and it has to be as dynamic as the business environment we operate in. As Anthony said, it needs to be real-time, always on, always updating. And so this partnership with Eightfold and Heidrick is really the intersection of leadership and technology to create that digital intelligence, which in turn we know will transform how we grow our businesses through great leaders.
For organizations, this is going to mean that they can maximize their probability of success, right? They can ensure that they've got the leaders that they need today, and that they're identifying and developing their leaders of the future. And by taking a data-driven approach and leveraging leadership intelligence, they can really start to determine what the formula for leadership success is for them, given a specific business problem. For instance, I don't think anyone will question whether there's a difference in the leadership qualities needed to be successful to start, kind of a fast emerging new line of business with high growth expectations versus a leader that needs to come in and lead a kind of a large scale, mature organization that needs to focus on efficiencies. But is it really obvious what the differences are in those leadership attributes that are needed for success? How to articulate them, how to measure them. Organizations will begin to better and more holistically understand their leaders. They'll be able to pinpoint and measure those qualities which are most directly linked to success. And they'll be able to do this in real time, model it, and go far beyond typical things like leadership behaviors, and really focus on what the organization needs to achieve the business outcome that they're managing towards.
And Sachit and Greg, I'm interested from the market perspective because your company is so well attuned to your client base. What are you seeing today with the dynamics that were just shared?
Yeah, so maybe a good way to describe this, and I think to Maria's point, which she made earlier, right, about 50% of roles being roles that they've never seen before. This is actually playing out across each and every one of our customers. Where the confluence of all of the changes that have happened around us because of the post-COVID world, in addition to the expectations of growth that all of these companies have, it results in this continuous cycle of HR basically being behind the eight ball, right? When it comes to defining the competency models that lead to success. And this is a area where, to be honest, data and AI can really solve the problem in a way that's never been possible before. So one of the things that we are starting to see with our forward-thinking customers is that they're really trying to define what are the skill sets of people that they need 5 years from now, 3 years from now. And how do you engineer a system in partnership with HR that is up to the challenge for this ever-changing world that we live in? And that is an area where we are partnering very heavily with some of the organizations like BNY that you mentioned, and many others that are starting to think very, very deeply about what does it actually take to succeed in this hyper-changing world that we live in. And that's an area where the technological advancements that we are seeing with the types of systems that we have built could really make a dent in solving this problem in a material way.
I think there's a couple major points that were made by all the panelists here. I think the first one really we need to address is the ever-changing role of leadership. And what this partnership invokes is the ability to use data provided by a world-class organization like Heidrick and Struggles that allows Eightfold to let me back up for a second. So what does this allow us to do? It allows us to use the data from a world-class organization like Heidrick and Struggles to then incorporate that information, that data set, into what true leadership looks like going forward. You mentioned BNY earlier. You mentioned several other clients. What we do now know is that job descriptions of the past are no longer relevant. We know that those skills that were needed 10, 15 years ago aren't the skills of the future. So when you take the assessments, the leadership insights that Heidrick has, along with the data ingestion and the capabilities that Eightfold has, you can look at the insights of what leadership is going to look for going forward, hiring for, and then eventually enabling those companies to be successful. The second thing you have to think about is what do we do with all of this data and information that we're gathering? And ultimately, what we're going to do with that is we're going to make businesses smarter. We're not going to just enable them to make better hiring decisions, but retention strategies, succession planning strategies. All of those enable them to make a true data-driven, informed decision on talent and people. That's what this is about. And then finally, I'll leave you with this. The partnership will enable us as a team to look at where is the future going? What is it that the job descriptions lack that we can now learn from data to go out, hire those people, promote those people, and look at diversity and inclusion and solve for it. Because we haven't solved for it, let's be honest. There has been this relevance to wanting to hire more diverse candidates, but Eightfold has solved that at the top of the pipeline as well as at the internal mobility, and then you layer that on top of what the skills are and the capabilities are of leadership with Heidrick, and you solve that problem. And that's really what we're looking forward to.
It's a compelling vision for talent management across the life cycle, and especially for the future of leadership. And thank each of you for your time today. I appreciate it. And thank you, the audience, members of the audience, for being on this virtual panel. And if you have any questions at all, please direct them to Eightfold. And I encourage you to learn more about this platform. If you're interested in the implications of technology on talent management and you want to see a company making a major impact for the good of the world, be sure to look at what they're doing. it's compelling. Thank you.